taught in my district. Sorry, Pam. So I will let them do their own introductions after this, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, we'll be talking a lot about ourselves through the whole presentation, so I won't say much more about who we are right now, but the first thing we want to do is thank you for what you do as conservation districts, and I think Aaron did a good job of summarizing even more of what you do for me to be able to understand that. But the way I say thank you is by giving books away. So I brought 2 books to share today that are just wonderful resources, in particular on soil health. So the first one is For the Love of Soil by Nicole Masters. And if you've not heard of Nicole Masters, I recommend that you look her up and check her out. And she is an agroecologist from New Zealand and is doing really cool stuff with soil. And the second book is Dirt to Soil: One Family's Journey into Regenerative Agriculture by Gabe Brown. And also, if you have not heard of Gabe Brown, I recommend you look him up. He farms and ranches just a few miles east of Bismarck, and I think that we are really fortunate to have world-renowned educators and leaders right here in our own state with Gabe. So I'll let you, some of you got up and moved around already, but stand up and look under your chair. And if you have an orange sticky note that says winner, winner, you get a book.
There we go.
So if you've read that or already have it, give it away or share it with a friend. All right, so Dustin and I are speaking today, and the title of our talk is Let Your Life Speak: Our Journey Through Buildup, Burnout, and Breakthrough. And we do have a lot of pictures and
Is this in the way?
Can't see well, please feel free to.
We'll just slide that back.
We were originally invited to do this talk in January at the North Grazing Land Coalition meeting. Apparently, I guess we got home from there, and a week later got a phone call to share this talk again with you. Neither Dustin nor I aspired to be public speakers, but if somebody sees something in our story that they think can be useful to other people, then we're going to be willing to share it. Our story, in a nutshell, is about how regenerative agriculture and developing a deeper connection and understanding of our soils, essentially, I would say, saved Dustin's life. This is a story that we're still learning to share, and it's not always easy. So at times we may struggle a little, but we'll do our best to get through it. But we're honored at the invitation to be here, so thanks for inviting us, Kelly. So to this point, our journey has 4 chapters now. The first chapter we call the Buildup, and this is from 2003 to 2017. And during the Buildup phase or chapter, all we did was add to our life. We added family, we added enterprises, we added equipment, vehicles, activities. We just added and added. And the only 2 things I can think back on that we actually eliminated during that time period was our free time and also my job and my income. So the second chapter is the burnout phase, and this is 2017 and 18. And this is when Dustin started developing some health issues that made it clear that we needed to do some rethinking and some changes needed to be made. The third chapter is the breakthrough, and this is when we discovered that there was a different way to do production agriculture, and that we didn't have to keep doing the same old things over and over again that clearly were not working for us. And after we spoke in January in Medora at the Grazing Land Coalition, we, on the way home, kind of realized that I think we've actually entered a 4th chapter. And part of that chapter is yet to be written, but part of it is, I guess, sharing our story with other people. So why are we sharing our story? We're going to be a little bit vulnerable, probably in sharing our story, so people don't typically like to do that, but we know that there is power and room for growth for us to be able to share it, and for people to be able to hear our story as well. And we also recognize that many parts of our state are likely entering possibly a third summer of drought, and that some pieces of our story might be helpful for you if you are a producer, or if you as you interact and encounter the producers that you're working with, that maybe there's some things you can take away that can help you with that. So Let Your Life Speak is part of our title, and what does that mean? Well, in 2017, when it was kind of a rough year, this is a book that I read over and over again, and it's written by a guy named Parker Palmer. And Let Your Life Speak is a Quaker saying that he writes about in this book. And Parker used to think in his younger years that what this meant was to, kind of pick out some values that society thinks are really important and then design your life to achieve those values and live up to those. But after years of experience and hard times and even bouts of depression, he came to realize that really what this meant is this: that before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you have decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody and what values you represent. And this really spoke to me during that time period, because I knew that we were not listening. We were trying to force our life in a direction that it did not want to go. And so since that time, we've gotten pretty good at learning how to listen and let our life just kind of tell us where it's supposed to go, which has led us here this morning. So we've been married for 18 years. We're both North Dakota raised, and we're the fourth generation owner-operators of our ranch, just 13 miles south of Powers Lake. We have 3 daughters, 15, 13, and 10, and we manage our owned and leased land using cow-calf pairs and yearlings. And we've been students of regenerative agriculture since 2018. So the first chapter of the Buildup. In 2003, we were married. In 2004, I graduated from UND with my master's in physical therapy, and Dustin clocked his final hour of apprenticeship as an electrician, and his parents decided to move on to a second career. And so at 23 years old, we had the opportunity to purchase the farm and ranch and have complete autonomy and business decision-making and get to do what we wanted to do. So the first part of that build-up phase was starting a family and all the fun and exciting things that come along with that. And Dustin's gonna speak now on more the operation side of things during that build-up period and kind of what that looked like.
So when we started, we had about 80 cows that we leased and owned. Over the years, we grew to about 350. Early on, the grazing systems, we always were considered proactive grazers, I guess you'd say. Two pie-shaped systems. We moved occasionally. We never really had a plan and never really understood why or how or what we were doing. We ran 4 herds total, and through all those early years, the cows were never our main deal. There was just something we were doing, as well as our main income stream was a haying enterprise. So everything I did with the cows was fast-paced and quick. It was 40-mile-an-hour check cows as I drove by on the road at 5 a.m. on the way to go do something else. Early on, we were calving in February, from 2004 to 2013. We maxed out at 280 head during that time, just dragging everything through the barn. I slept in either the old Honda Accord I'd drive around in the winter, or else I'd sleep in the barn in a recliner for a month and a half every winter. And then in April in 2013, we moved to April calving, and that was, I don't know if it was worse or better, but it was just different in those spring snowstorms. We calved on pasture, but ended up bringing stuff into the yard, and it was just never really a easy, predictable time in my life. I did enjoy it. I did feel like a hero a lot, but looking back, it was a lot of unnecessary work I was doing. And about 3,500 acres of tame and native pastures, and we grew that to 4,500 acres by 2012. The haying enterprise, like I said, was our main enterprise. We had 1,000 acres of 1,100 acres of alfalfa and 400 acres of mixed hay. Typically run 4,500 ton of hay a year is what we put up, selling most of that, feeding the lower quality stuff to our own cattle. In 2011 was our biggest year. We put up 8,500 ton of hay. Sold to dairies, horse owners, feedlots, brokers. Oil field is a wonderful thing for the hay business. We had trucks coming from all over the place. I had trucks showing up at the end of the field with $100 bills looking for a load. It was pretty nuts. We've sold hay into every state west of the Mississippi other than the coastal states, basically, without any marketing. It was really kind of a crazy time. Getting into the projects, I was always building, remodeling, fixing stuff. We did a whole house remodel over the years. We did all our outbuildings and put up the heated shop and finished that and rebuilt all our corrals. Very, very active with with Montreal County and PAMA and NRCS and SoilCon over the years. They did a lot of tree plantings. We planted thousands of trees and water wells, grass seedings, fence. Did some CRP conversions through those early years. And of course, we put in the egg waste feedlot. That was in 2012, I believe. So the feedlot was a pretty big project. We are permitted with the state of North Dakota. It's not really a big feedlot. We're only permitted for 500 head, but the way the water drains through our place, it all ends up going down into the alkali lake. It's about a mile away from our place, and every spring there was a huge brown puddle on that lake. So I hope for a quick melt, but I hope for that ice to quick so you get rid of that big brown puddle out there. And so we did put in an egg waste system to help mitigate that, as well as use up some of the lower quality feed from our haying enterprise. So we can run that through a cattle. We did some custom grazing or custom feeding and grew replacement heifers mostly for neighbors. I never did finish anything through that, but with the feedlot came silage and all the extra work that came with that, and the high inputs, we did hire the chopping done, but just the high inputs and the stress of that, and efficiency was always pushed, whether it was the haying enterprise or the feedlot stuff. It was always, for the most part, I was a one-man show with some help from my dad and an uncle occasionally, and we did have South African help for 2 months every summer just to help with the haying. But other than that, I was a one-man show for the most part. With the efficiency, we added bigger equipment and just being able to do stuff quick. Where at the peak of the feedlot, we were feeding 1,000 head and between my cows and the feedlot, and I could get it usually done between 2 and 2.5 hours. So it was not a huge deal, but it was a constant deal. Of course, we had to add more buildings to store more stuff, and the picture on the left there is my shop. My shop was always packed full of stuff that was broken. It was just a constant, a list of things to fix, and it never got out from underneath that weight. Just more stuff and more stuff and more stuff. So, additionally, through those years, we were very active community-wise. Either Barbara or I were on church councils for all those years, both locally and statewide. Barbara and I are both currently still EMTs with Powers Lake Ambulance, which you don't really understand. It doesn't take all that much time, but that pager's always there. It's always, you never know when that's going off in the middle of the night or whatever. But served on multiple boards. I was on 7 boards at one time was the most I was on, I guess. I'm still a township chairman. And then, of course, the oil field. Anybody that is from western North Dakota that understands what the oil field did to neighborhoods and communities and just stress levels, and understands what that was. From 2008 to 2013, I averaged 10 to 15 phone calls a day dealing with oil field stuffing on our land or our township for stuff. My busiest day was 45 phone calls, and I shut down a gravel pit and put up 400 bales of hay that day. So it was kind of some chaotic times through all that. So through all that, we decided, family was getting older, and we realized we weren't having any fun. So we started adding fun. We added a camper, we added a boat, we added family trips. One thing I'm very grateful for, Barbara and I did prioritize just to get every winter we did get away for a week. We've been to the Caribbean 10 times. And a wonderful week of our life, but it took me about 4 days to decompress and enjoyed it for 2, and then I was thinking about being home again. So the livestock business is a very simple business. The complicated part is keeping it simple. Tom Laster said that in Dave Pratt's book. In 2017, I was sitting in the tractor. I don't know if everybody's ever run a big square baler, but it'll about put you to sleep. You sit there and rock back and forth, and you don't ever have to stop and basically put your feet up on the dash and kind of have to fall asleep. And I was bored, and I started counting tires. I went through all the equipment I used, everything that I had. Nothing that was sitting in the tree rows, but stuff I was using. I came up with 478 tires I had to keep air in to keep my operation running. And just the pressure, that's not engines, that's not batteries, that's not all the other stuff, that's just tires that I had to keep air in. So we'd really grown to a ridiculous, stupid place looking back. We were profitable, we were making money, we were doing what we were doing, but all we did was add stuff and responsibility. So.
All right, so chronic stress. So I do come from a medical background, but I'm not at all an expert in this stuff, but I'm so interested in the body and how it works, and as we've come to learn more about our soil and how amazing that is, I just think it's so cool how similar our bodies and the soil are in terms of, they're both complex systems, and they're both designed to tolerate acute stress, and that actually makes them better, makes them stronger. So, high impact animal grazing with a long recovery period is going to improve our soil. Lifting weights will break our muscles down for a moment, but then it'll rebuild them stronger. But neither our soils or our bodies are designed to handle chronic stress, and it will destroy both of them. Our bodies are actually designed to have a hormone-induced reaction that puts our bodies into a perfect condition to be able to fight off a threat, to fight it or flee it. And this, some of those pieces are increased heart rate, blood pressure, decreased digestion, just getting our bodies in the prime condition to protect ourselves. And this is a good thing. We need to have this happen in our bodies, but in our current society with constant technology, information, workload, so many of us are ending up in just chronic states of stress, and our bodies are never getting out of that sympathetic state, and our bodies and our minds are not able to repair, and this leads to many physical and mental health conditions. The tipping point for Dustin, I think, and for us was our feedlot. Normally in the winter, he maybe had 6 weeks where he could kind of take a break and have a little bit of mental recovery, but once we added the feedlot, we were feeding other people's calves, he was having to figure out a ration to mix, and then doing daily chores, and so he didn't get that break anymore, and I think that kind of just pushed things over the top. He also touched on efficiency and how we had focused so much on efficiency and doing things really well, and that is important, but we've since learned about effectiveness, and effectiveness is doing the right thing in the first place. And we were super efficient, but we weren't necessarily doing the right thing. So in the introduction to the E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber says this about effectiveness. Small businesses in the United States simply do not work. The people who own them do. And what we have also discovered is that the people who own small businesses in this country work far more than they should for the return that they are getting. Indeed, the problem is not that the owners of small businesses in this country don't work. The problem is that they are doing the wrong work. As a result, most of their businesses end up in chaos, unmanageable, unpredictable, and unrewarding. And this is where we found ourselves. The next quote I'm going to share is kind of long. It's actually 3 slides long, but it really summarizes our story. And this is a quote by Dave Pratt, who is of the Ranching for Profit Business School. And he says this, and as you're listening to this, maybe someone will pop into your mind that this reminds you of, or maybe it's yourself. But he says, young people scare me, especially the ones who are young, smart, strong, and willing to work from dawn till dusk. They scare me because they tend to build businesses that require youth, brawn, and a willingness to put in long hours. And actually, they don't build businesses as much as they create jobs for themselves. Low-paying, physically demanding jobs with long hours and no vacation time. I used to say they don't own businesses, they own jobs. But really, their jobs own them. And that's a problem, because when they get to be a little older and have kids in school and 4-H and FFA and sports, they find themselves trapped by the jobs they've created. It's as though they've painted themselves into a corner and that paint never dries. And I think that there's a lot of people in agriculture right now that feel that they're painted in a corner. If you can't get away, your farm does not work for you. You work for it. Rather than the farm supporting our life, too often we spend our life supporting our farm. As we get older, we lose more money, we lose more time for ourselves and our families. It zaps our energy and our drive, it zaps our spirit. Rather than adding to our life, it takes our life away. Working harder is not the answer. You cannot run a sustainable business on unsustainable effort. And we had tried to build a business on unsustainable effort. And ironically, after I put these pictures in these slides, I realized a pattern that I hadn't even intended. But look at Dustin's back in all these pictures. Bent over. I mean, it's backbreaking. So we've got to, when I was working in the hospitals, we used to say, if you don't use your brain, you're going to use your feet. If you forget to grab something, you got to use your feet. And I think it's the same thing. We got to start doing things smarter instead of just harder. So November 5th, 2017, Dustin had his first panic attack. So a panic attack is a sudden episode of fear that triggers physical reactions when there's really no danger. And essentially, people feel like they're having a heart attack or dying. For Dustin, he had chest pain. It wasn't radiating, but his chest was tight. He was noise and light sensitive. He had a rapid and pounding heart, and he could not get off the couch. So he touched on kind of what we did in those first 13 years in our business that kind of led to this point. But in just the few weeks leading up to that day, this is what else he had done. He had finished a major exterior remodel on our house where he did all the work. We had chopped corn. We had moved and worked cattle and shipped our calves for fall sale. And he was a really good dad. Despite all of those other activities he had to do, he went to 4-H with the kids and helped with the project, and he let a 5-year-old help with a siding project, and he let our oldest run the chute when we were working the calves. And he was a good husband. I was preparing to leave to go to California with my mom to help her clean out her dad's home. And he was convinced everything would be fine. He had it all under control. But November 5th, everything kind of just hit the fan. So he's been developing anxiety for a period of time leading up to this. He had been getting harder and harder to be able to go out to social events, to basketball games. He would start sweating. He was getting stomach issues, some digestive issues, and he was constantly feeling tired. And he says he was running on the 3 C's: coffee, Coca-Cola, and Copenhagen. And he was dependent on those stimulants just to get through his day. So in hindsight, we should have gone to the ER probably on November 5th, but I had a good sense that it wasn't a cardiac issue and that it was just anxiety. But knowing what we know now, I think that panic attacks can probably actually trigger cardiac events. So if you find yourself in that situation, you go in. But I put in the next day, and I did EKGs and chest X-rays, and everything was clear. So there was no cardiac concerns. But because of his stomach issues, they put him on omeprazole and scheduled him for some GI testing a couple months later. And because he just couldn't even lift his hand to his mouth to do it, to put a dip in, he quit chew that day. And for anybody in the room that chews knows how big of a deal that is. So again, about 6 weeks later, Christmas Eve, it happened again. He was preparing chores and everything for us to be gone for a few days for Christmas, and the thought of leaving just pushed him over again. So the The girls and I went to Christmas Eve services alone that year. He stayed home on the couch, and then the next day we sent the kids with his family. These pictures I put there just to point out he was willing to put a shirt on and take a picture with me and do some gifts with the kids just to kind of make it as normal as possible for them. But I think inside he was just completely and utterly miserable. So December 26th, we went to the clinic again. Everything was clear. There was nothing wrong. But he did fail the depression screen. And that was really eye-opening for us. We weren't expecting that, I don't think. And it's kind of like the frog in the slowly heating pot of water. We just didn't even see that coming. So then in March, he had his GI testing, and that was clear. He had no ulcers. There was nothing wrong. There was nothing physically wrong with him. So we could focus on identifying what the real problems were. So burnout. Burnout is becoming so prevalent in our society that in 2019, the World Health Organization added it to their ICD-11 code book under problems related to employment and unemployment. Burnout is a syndrome that is basically chronic workplace stress that has not been managed. And I think that this is probably going to be an issue that's only getting more and more prevalent in agriculture. It's characterized by 3 dimensions: energy depletion and exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's jobs, just not wanting to even go to work, and reduced professional efficacy. And Dustin experienced all 3 of those. And again, kind of the irony in this, that our push for efficiency early on led to the opposite result, that when you're laying on the couch and you can't get up and go to work, you're not very efficient. So I put this picture up here because it's really hard to see on people's faces if they're dealing with stress or anxiety, panic attacks, burnout, whatever. This picture was taken about maybe 4 days after Dustin's first panic attack. I did end up going to California and helping my mom with that project because he, a day later seemed fine and said he could handle everything. So I did go and help her. But he looks perfectly fine there. And so likely on your break today or lunch, you're probably going to visit with someone who can't sleep at night or has anxiety or has had a panic attack. And a little bit of opportunities that we've had to share our story, we've been just blown away that whoever we're sharing it with has come back to us and said, oh yeah, I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety, I can't sleep at night. And so being able to talk about these things, particularly in the agriculture community, in my opinion, is definitely the first step and something we need to be doing. So a book that I highly recommend is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And one of the pieces in that book is what he calls the production capability balance. And I feel like so many things in life come back to balance. How do we balance things? And so the production is the desired results the outcome we want. And the production capability is the asset or the ability to produce that result. He uses Aesop's fable of the farmer with the goose that lays the golden eggs to describe this. And it goes as such: the farmer has a goose who one day he wakes up and finds that the goose laid a golden egg. And day after day this continues, and the farmer becomes extremely wealthy. Well, then the farmer says to himself, well, I could just kill the goose and take all of the eggs at once, and then I don't have to be patient and wait day after day for these eggs. I can just get it all at once. Well, he does that. I killed the goose and opened it up and finds that there's no golden eggs inside. And so here he's killed the asset that was producing all of his wealth. So for us in agriculture, maybe in our hay enterprise, we wanted to put up really high quality dairy hay. So that was the production that we desired, the result we desired. Well, the capability to do that, or the asset that is required, is very labor intensive. It's extremely mentally draining and stressful trying to get your moistures just right, or watching the weather to see if it's going to rain. And so you have to figure out how to balance what you want with what it requires to get that. Another example is weaning a bigger calf is maybe a desired result that ranchers have. Well, what's required to get that is a higher financial input, with buying a more expensive bull or putting out creep feed or whatever. And so we have to be able to balance those things. Covey says it's a principle you can see validated in your own life when you burn the candle at both ends to get more golden eggs and wind up sick or exhausted, unable to produce at all. So we're just scratching the surface on stress and mental health and all those things. We are not, qualified to dig too deep into it. But one thing that we have really come to learn is how important rest is. And there's a TED talk by this Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith that does a great job of kind of describing how important rest is, and to also realize that rest and sleep are two different things. So maybe you do sleep well at night, and that's great. That's when your mind needs to be able to regenerate and recover. But rest is ways of kind of regenerating different areas of your life. So there's 7 different types: physical, mental, sensory, creative, emotional, social, and spiritual. And so how are we doing on looking at each of those different areas of our life to see if we can come back into better balance. One tool, I guess, that Dustin has found that has helped him on that rest piece is the Calm app. And so if anybody deals with anxiety or has trouble kind of just with mindfulness and relaxing in the moment, the Calm app has been a really effective tool. No, I can't be bothered with new ideas. I've got a battle to fight. So clearly there's a tool here that might help this person in fighting that battle and even preventing future battles, but he's leaving, forging ahead, so focused on the task that's ahead that he can't hear new ideas. And Dustin found this cartoon and sent it to me to share, and I think it was kind of his way of saying sorry, because I had ideas and I shared them, but he was so busy putting out fires every single day that he couldn't hear what I was saying. And do you have more to add on that, in terms of just putting out fires? So just know that, maybe you come across a producer or something that you think maybe something might be beneficial to them in their operation or whatever, and just realize if they're busy trying to figure out
how to get through
fire
the day
to put out, that at least you're planting a seed, even if they don't respond immediately. So change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And unfortunately, as humans, we don't like change. We like to stay comfortable or stay with what's familiar, even if what's familiar is a little painful. We'd rather stay in that state of discomfort than step into change. But for us, change wasn't an option. Change was the only option. Change was the only option because staying the same way was far too painful. So another way to look at it, Tim Ferriss says, pure hell forces action, but anything less can be endured with enough clever rationalizations. So I think we're pretty good at coming up with excuses why things are the way they are. And the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And this is what we did. We knew that we couldn't just make some small changes in what we were doing. We needed to focus all of our energy on doing some new things. So the breakthrough chapter, the 3rd chapter, this is the exciting one for us. In 2018, that January, after he had had his 2 panic attacks, we were like, all right, something's got to give. So we decided to get rid of our haying enterprise, which meant giving up, was it 800 acres, 1,000 acres of hay ground? We had one season left on that lease, but he was able to get through that season knowing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So that was kind of the first step. And then in October of 2018, we attended a North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition mentor guided workshop. And I had been encouraging him to go to those for quite some time, and he finally decided to do it. And he came home from that a completely different person. He came home happy, and he said that he had never been in a room full of all producers who were all happy. And it's a group of people who are willing to be proactive, and if there's a problem, to look at it as opportunity, or at least try to figure out the steps to fix it. So we got to work right away with NRCS to develop some more infrastructure to change our grazing. And the biggest thing for me, because I love books, is Dustin read a book. And this is a guy that hadn't read a book since 3rd grade probably. He's not a reader. And I bought Alan Savory's Holistic Management and Walt Davis's How to Not Go Broke Ranching, and he zoomed through them. I couldn't believe it, and so I just keep feeding him books now. He's a reader now.
I think she ordered 5 books this week, So,
and then we consume probably thousands of hours of podcasts and YouTube videos, and the information is just at our fingertips. It's amazing. And then we began the journey to discovering our purpose. And I don't say rediscovering, it was discovering, because we did not have a purpose prior to this. And in 2020 and 2021, we attended the week-long Ranching for Profit Business School. And this is where we were able to actually get the tools that we needed to move our ideas forward, I guess. And we started the steps to becoming a business and not just a collection of jobs. And so I'm going to end my part with this other quote from that book, Let Your Life Speak. So ask yourself, is the life I am living the same as the life that wants to live in me? I think this is something that we should ask ourselves daily.
So if you want to make small changes, change the way you see things, or your way to do things. How we screw that one up. But if you want to make big changes, change the way you see things. And we needed to make big changes, and it became very obvious to me. So I grabbed this picture just because this was taken in the spring of this year, and previously I would have just seen another tire that needed to keep air in. When I look at that picture now, I see a stock density that's high enough to put manure on the tires. It looks like you were driving through a corral when you're actually driving out through the pasture. So it's a totally, my mind did a complete shift. I'm a totally different person than I was mentally and physically at that time. So what did we change? Well, when putting this together and reflecting on this, we changed everything. There isn't a single thing in our business that we're doing the same now as we did in 2017. We still have cows, we still have grass, we still have land, but none of it's managed the same. None of the purposes are the same. Every single thing is different. And Barb likes this picture because we're now chicken ranchers. This summer we'll have more chickens on our place than we have cows. Between the girls as egg layers, the broilers, the young chicks we're growing. Girls have a little pasture poultry egg business that they're doing really well with, selling eggs. So the power of elimination, it wasn't about what we added to make these changes, but more so about what we quit doing. We always want to think we can add something to fix problems, but it's more about what we need to quit doing. And it was really evident to me. And nature is pleased with simplicity, and nature is no dummy. So often as producers, we try and manipulate nature, whether it's with fertilizers, with chemicals, with monocultures. It's really fulfilling just to get out of the way and let Mother Nature do her thing. And it's sometimes the hardest thing for producers to do. So what did we eliminate? Well, it's kind of a long list. The biggest thing we did is we eliminated selling hay, which is about 3 months of labor for me between the cutting, the trucking, the everything. It was basically 3 months worth of labor. We quit forage testing and our hay and our feed. We quit seeding. Last year we seeded our last 200 acres of ground to a permanent polyculture. We seeded 28 different species into that mix. About 60% of that is grasses and 25% wildflowers and about 10% legumes. But there's 26, 27 species in those last mixes we did. We quit spraying with the exception of a little bit of spot spraying for some noxious weeds. We quit fertilizing. We quit calving cows and heifers. We quit physically being there for that process. We calve in May and June now. They're out on pasture. I go look at them if I feel like it or if I have to move cows. That's all I do. It's just such a simple process when you step out of the way and let nature do its thing. We quit tagging. We quit sorting pairs. We quit hauling pairs. We quit branding. We quit PGing cows, pregnancy testing cows. With the exception of this year, we did do it again this year just because of some drought management stuff. We quit treating sick calves. Our health problems disappeared when we changed our management. We quit daily fueling and greasing the equipment. Our drive for production stopped. It's not about production anymore. It's about profitability, and they're two very different things. We don't need a lot of tonnage, or we don't need a lot of weight on calves. We quit ultrasounding our heifers, with the exception of last year. Again, in the drought, we did do that just to speed up some of our and implement our drought plan. We quit vaccinating and pouring cows. We haven't used any insecticide or pour on our cows since 2017. A wonderful thing to quit doing. Everybody, one of those things that people say, oh, you can't do that, or even my vet doesn't like me doing that. I haven't had any issues. Quit daily feeding cows in the winter. We implemented the bale grazing. I don't start with the exception of this year and some drought thing again, and trying to use up some silage that we had left over from the feedlot. I didn't start a tractor this winter. Last winter, I didn't start a tractor till the middle of March. So we went all the way through the winter without starting a tractor, other than to move a little bit of snow. Quit hauling manure. I quit putting up straw, I guess. We quit scraping and managing the feed line of the feedlot. I quit sitting in a tractor. My equipment maintenance and repairs disappeared. I quit trucking. I still have my semi. It's on the list of things to get sold, I guess. We quit chopping corn. I quit tarping and on-tarping haystacks. I quit dealing with horse hay buyers. I don't know if anybody's a horse person in here or not. I apologize if you are, but I did not enjoy dealing with horse hay buyers. Not all horse hay buyers are bad, but some of them get very frustrating. I quit calculating rations and figuring out and buying feed stuff and sorting all through that, trying to get our gains right. I quit washing and cleaning equipment. And I quit borrowing money and updating equipment, which is also a pretty huge one. Just the mental strain of always trying to stay updated and all that stuff. And so I know there's more, but I'm still going to go over our allotted time here. But as to methods, there may be 1 million and then some, but principles are few. The man who grasps principles can successfully select his own methods. The man who tries methods ignoring principles is sure to have trouble. This is probably the most important slide of everything else I'm going to say. Whether it's soil health principles, whether it's economic principles, whether it's family and relationship principles. For producers in the room that pick up one idea that I'm talking about that I'm doing on and switch, switching to make calving, you're going to have a wreck without switching everything else in your business. Your marketing changes, your feed changes, if you switch your calving to May and don't change anything else, all you do is sell a lighter calf for less money. So everything's tied together, whether it's the soil, like I say, all the principles. And we could talk for an hour on each one of those sets of principles, but it speaks to how intertwined everything is, and you really need to step back and think about it to really be effective. So part of the Ranching for Profit School really teaches us to think before we act and to have purpose. And we went through about a 3-hour process and wrote our mission statement. And our mission statement for Roise Ranch is healthy choices for abundant life. And this applies to everything we do now, both in our personal life and our ranch life. It all comes back to this, and we use it as a check to, if we're going to add something new, if we're going to do something new, does it fulfill this? Or are we just spinning our wheels? Are we going in the wrong direction? So this gets kind of lengthy. This is all part of our mission statement, but I think it's important to really understand who we've become, and from versus where we are with no direction. We have a ton of direction now. So our customer value, whoever we sell our products to or we do business with, we're going to have a predictable and profitable cattle from producers you can trust. We're going to have confidence in the health of the cattle and the land, and a connection to and a sense of community with the land. In our core principles, we strive to understand the systems that comprise and the relationships that exist within our ecosystem. We believe these include but are not limited to natural cycles, community, family and interpersonal relationships, personal and spiritual wellness, and economics. We respect the unique forms of communication upon which each system performance is dependent. We actively observe and listen to assess the health and vitality of each system and their independent relationships. And we ask questions, make decisions, take action that progresses towards the wellness of the whole. So it's been really a fun process to go through and spend the days in the office working through the why we do what we're doing. And it's really changed us just from a collection of jobs to really having a purpose. At Roise Ranch, we exist to enhance ecological abundance and provide opportunities for teaching and learning. We seek to create a lifestyle that prioritizes the value of time, flexibility, and fun. This low-stress approach to business will spark interest and participation from the next generation. With less time spent working, we spend more time growing our own healthy food and pursuing opportunities that fulfill our creative desires. I really like that statement, and the healthy food part is really something we've really enjoyed. I think we haven't figured out exactly, but I'm guessing we grow about 75% of our own food we consume. It's really fulfilling. Every year we push that a little bit more, but we're really understanding how important healthy, nutrient-rich food is to ourselves. And even with my anxiety, Barb was gone for a week in November, and I ate like crap that week. I ate pizza and beer, and it was a bad week. And my anxiety, by the end of that time, she was gone for 5 days. I think by the end of that, I was kind of a wreck. My anxiety was really high. And I talked to several other people with the same thing, and they notice a huge difference when they don't eat, and how closely that's tied to anxiety. So the last part, I guess, of our mission statement is we use our profit to share financial gifts with our church and community, enjoy life as a family through travel and experience. We build reserves to our defined targets, we pay dividends to our owners, and we invest in, on, and off-farm ranch opportunities. So in a matter of a few years, we went from just paying our bills and doing our thing to living in abundance. We have more time, more grass, and more financial resources than we've ever had in our ranching career in a matter of just a few years of really assessing and changing what we've been doing. What's that? And a purpose for it, yes. So part of that is separating our land and our ranch business. So we made an LLP for our land. So our land is now owned by Prairie Land Resources. It's a 50-50 partnership between Barb and I. And with that, really changed my role and my purpose. I no longer see myself as a cattle rancher or a cattleman or a cowboy or any of those things. I'm a land manager, and that's what I do. I use cattle to manage my land and the land of our landlords, but it is my sole purpose, is to manage land, manage soil, manage grass, and everything that's on that land. And it's really a fun life that I'm finding now. So when you're ranching for profit, if you're going to do something, you need to make at least as much as if you were doing nothing. And it's a pretty simple statement, but how many ranchers don't pay themselves a wage? How many ranchers work all year long for $10,000 at the end of it when they could have rented out all their land for $50,000? So to really stop and look at that and think about that. So the ranch now is operating under Roise Ranch LLC. It's a single-member LLC just for tax purposes, owned by me, and we pay a rent to Prairie Land Resources. We pay a fair market rent to ourselves from the land we own, and I also pay myself a salary. That's not completely what I'm worth, but it's pretty dang close. I'm not being arrogant in saying that either, I guess, but it's we're growing into to where I will be replaceable. If there were to be a health problem with me, or if something were to happen to me, Barb could hire a manager to come in, and there's a salary already in place for that. So part of the first parts of all this process was remodeling the office, make it a place we want it to be. We spend a lot of time in the office now. We got our estate plan in place with a living trust. We're in the beginning phases of a succession plan. We're constantly working on the business. We have weekly meetings. We work on our marketing, education. We plan. We do all that stuff. We try and have family meetings. In this particular picture, we put all our jobs that we do on the ranch on the wall, and our daughters picked out what they like to do, and just give us an idea of how we bring them in, and what we can do with them to make their interest grow in what we're doing, and also just nurture and build that desire to be part of the business. And when we're a business first family, our business stuff is taken care of, so we can be a family. There's nothing hanging over our heads. We just get our business in order so we can do the fun things. As I said, I'm a land manager now, and as a land manager, one of my biggest jobs is human relations. I never thought I'd be in the human relations business. I kind of like cows, where I could just always be in control, and I didn't have to listen, or it was my way or the highway. But it's really fun to work with the landlords during all this process. To do a complete 180 on our management. Communication was key in that. So we have 3,800 acres of rented land, 11 different landlords, and 23 different people to correspond with within those. We do intentional communications and visits with trying to get every landlord on their land every year, looking at what we're doing, looking at the soils, looking at plants, looking at wildlife. And we write landlord letters every year. So that letter consists of every summary of what we're doing on our ranch as a whole, as well as what's going on individually on their property, what days the cattle were there, how long they were there, how many cattle were there, what infrastructure problems we had, what plants we saw that we haven't seen before. Really engaging our landlords, letting them know they're part of something bigger, and it's not just we're not just using their land and profiting from it, or in a lot of cases degrading it. So it's really been a fun process to watch the landlords buy in and really understand what we're doing, and it's really been a fun process to work with the landlords. And through that, we learned the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. We have to be really careful. When we started, previously we were, we doing some season-long grazing on some parcels with maybe 50 cows. And all of a sudden, you don't show up that year with no, sometimes we rest for a whole year and we won't bring cattle in at all now. And other times we'll show up with 300. So if we show up with 300 pair all of a sudden one year, and we typically had 50 there, there's going to be problems if it's not communicated ahead of time. So it's really, communication is really important. We're just going to run through a little bit of the infrastructure here. I'll try not to spend too much time. Again, I could spend days. I love this stuff. I could spend days doing some of this, but right now we have 11 water wells feeding 33 three-season tanks and 9 winter tanks. We currently have 76 different pastures. When we started this in 2017, we had 22. We put in 87,000 feet of high tensile fence in 2018 and 2019. We've added 39,000 feet of shallow pipeline and another mile of deep pipeline for winter grazing. Anybody that's producers in the room, or if you want more information on some of the infrastructure, if something sparks your mind here, I'm not going to go into all of it, but find me afterwards. We're going to stick around. This is kind of an overview of our ranch and different pastures. Our home place is here, so we're pretty connected. We're pretty close, but all these little dotted lines are where I put polywire and temporary fence last year, and I just haven't cleared it out when I took this screenshot. But those are all, the solid lines are all permanent pastures, and this other slide shows our water infrastructure and some of that stuff. We use Pasture Map to track all our grazing and plan our grazing. When I sent the last report to NRCS, I think it was 480 pages long of the grazing data off of this program. So I don't think Mark Crosby appreciates me too much, but I think he sorts through it pretty well. So fencers, everybody's got their favorite one. I like this one. It's got a remote control, so if everybody that's not familiar with electric fencing, you can touch that anywhere on the electric wire a mile away from your fencer and you turn it on and off. So it's really quick, it's really easy. They don't make solar ones of this, so I build my own. Again, if you have questions, we can talk about that later. My Geo Tracker's my favorite little vehicle. It's my side-by-side. I chopped it, made a box, but the little thing, oops, I'll go back. The little guide on the front there is for driving over polywire or high tensile wire. I don't use gates. I just drive over my fence wherever I want to, jumping from pasture to pasture, quick and easy. And we do a lot of supplemental feeding. There's a big difference between supplemental and substitution feeding. This year I started supplementing my cows in November, but I didn't start substitute feeding them until January. So we fed 2 bales of hay. Actually, I fed about 2 bales of kochia bales we put up. We started that in November just to give them a little protein, get them through while we're still grazing some really dried up grass. And so the bale beds and the doing that have been pretty effective for us. 4-wheelers, the same thing. Everybody's got their favorite. Same thing. I put the little skid on the front so we can drive over polywire, high tensile, run across pastures wherever we need to, no gates ever. And then the polywire holder and roller so to roll it out easy. Just some products I like as far as the polywire and stuff. There's a huge difference in products. If you're going to start doing a lot of temporary fence, don't go to Tractor Supply and buy stuff. Spend some money and buy some good stuff because it's well worth it. I know I'm running through a lot of this stuff pretty fast, but there's 1,000 different ways to describe grazing, and what I like to say that we do is adaptive planned grazing. My job for next week is to sit in the office and lay out grazing for the year. So we'll really, this is the grazing chart that we use, and every pasture is listed and the days we're going to be in each pasture and is planned out. It doesn't always go according to plan. Last year with the drought, our grazing plan was out the window and we were completely off by the 1st of May. But we still went through the same rotation. We just really increased our polywire, increased the moves, and allowed for longer recovery. At any given time on our ranch, 98 to 99% of the land is resting. We have cows on less than 2% of our land, which is, I want to push that a little more and get that even better, but it's really fun to watch what long recovery will do in good rest periods. So I never dreamt we'd get to this pace we were when we started these changes in 2020. When we first got our building fence and stuff in front of the cow moves that year. We moved all 130 times that year with the cattle. In 2021 we moved 211. So we really jumped. We were moving every couple days because of the drought and allowing for an more even plane of nutrition and longer recovery times. Our cow herd, the cows need to work for me now. We're focusing on forage efficient, low maintenance maternal genetics. We do start calving May 25th now on pasture in one herd with our cows and heifers together. And the start date of May 25th is really important because the cow's highest nutritional demand is right after she calves. So to calve right now means you need to supplement 100% of the cow's nutritional needs to where we calve in sync with nature and the grass is green. The grass is at its highest nutritional value about the 1st of June. So that's why we calve then. We still are using some mineral. I think we got 2 or 3 years left before I'll be able to cut that out until our grass gets a little bit recovered from this drought. But we plan to completely eliminate mineral in all supplements as well. But we're a few years away from doing that yet, I think. In 2021, we did move daily during calving, which is a challenge to learn. But stockmanship's become a huge part of what I do. I can move our cattle anywhere I want to by myself. For the most part, we did do one move last year, 3/4 of a mile across some neighbors' land as they held their cows to the south side. We moved young calves, some of them day-old calves, 3/4 of a mile across a neighbor's pasture because of the stockmanship we've learned and how to do that. So typically day-old calves you don't do anything with, but it's a matter of building a lot of trust and spending time with those cattle to where my cattle trust me. I can't explain it really. It's really interesting to watch the trust change and how everybody said, oh, you calve in May, you're gonna have wild cows and everything's just gonna be crazy. But I have the calmest, most easy to handle cows we've ever had. They see me out there every day. I'm not harassing. I'm not trying to catch their calf and tag it. I'm just there. I'm no threat to them. I'm just like a bird walking through them as they graze. We do raise 75% of our own bulls and really focus on the genetics that we want to have. So our goal is to graze a minimum of April 1st through December 31st and bale graze January, February, and March. I think we could probably push this a little bit more, but the bale grazing has been a wonderful tool for us. Anybody that doesn't know what bale grazing looks like, this picture here kind of shows it. Oops, I got it in the wrong one. We set out about 1,000 bales every fall in groups of about 100, and then we turn the whole herd of cattle into those 100 bales for however long it takes them to eat it up, and then we just move the herd to the next bunch. Yes, there is a little more waste, there some people would say, but from what I've been told, for every pound of organic matter you leave, you'll grow 3 times that in grass the next year. And we've seen that pretty efficiently in what we've done. We have about 300 acres of farmland that was farmed really well in the 60s and 70s, I'll say. This picture here, my grandma took in 1963, and the washout isn't the worst part about this picture. The worst part of this picture to me is this foot of topsoil that's there. This picture was taken in 63 and it was farmed until 74, and then my dad seeded it to grass. On those 300 acres, I have an average of 1/2 inch of topsoil right now. So from 63 to 74, we lost a foot of topsoil. So it's a pretty common thing around western North Dakota. Get farther east and you have maybe you'll have a little more topsoil to work with, but cultivation is a terrible thing. And it just destroys. I know it's pretty common practice out east yet. Western North Dakota with this drought last year, farmers still raised pretty good crops, average or better than average in most cases. And the tillage is the reason. The organic matter that holds that moisture on 1% increase in organic matter can hold an additional 20,000 gallons of water per acre. That's a lot of additional water. So as soil con people, you can really help promote that idea and try and get away from the tillage. No matter where you are in the state, there's producers that are progressive and not using tillage. I'm pretty confident in every county there's somebody not using tillage and having great success with it, but there's still a lot of people that are doing it. So this bale graze is really helping to heal this land. It's going to take me 20 years to do it on those 300 acres for the number of acres I can cover. But in our drought this year, the only place where grass actually reached maturity on those 300 acres is where we bale grazed in 2019. So we had bales here in 2019. I wish I would have got a picture in the summer, but I didn't think of it. This was taken in November. But it was the only place that grass actually shot a seed head in 2019 is where we bale grazed on those 300 acres. So the profitability side, everybody always, we first gave this presentation to a group of ranchers and everybody asked, well, that's great, but is it profitable? And it's, without going into too much detail, the first thing I can say is the first wealth is health. And I'm obviously in a better place than I was. Financially though, I guess there's two other things, the health and then the time piece. It's hard to put a value on time and the quality of life that it's changed for me in adapting the regenerative ag practices. But also financially, 2021 was probably the most profitable year we ever had. I haven't looked back at all the numbers, but I'm pretty sure in a drought, implementing what we did, 2021 was the most profitable year we had since I started ranching. So the next chapter, as Barb mentioned, in the last 2 months, we kind of decided we started a new chapter. So after first presenting this, we've really focused on managing and living for what we want rather than managing against what we don't want. It's a pretty, think about it, I guess, a little bit. And rather than managing against a weed, we manage for healthy grass. Rather than trying to figure out how to get all that time to do everything, we eliminate things to allow us time to do what we want to do. And it has cascading and compounding effects, thinking about the how can I rather than why can't I, and always being proactive and surrounding yourself with people that think the same way. Going through this whole process, it was actually a really lonely process because there's not a lot of producers in our area that are early adapters and taking things to the extent we did. And you see people drive by slowly and just kind of look at you. You hear about people talking about you at the coffee shop. It was actually a really lonely time in all these changes. But it's a matter of rewiring myself to live in patience and peace and not urgency. It's been a challenge, and it's an ongoing challenge. Recently, or after our talk in November, or in January, we did join the Executive Link, which is a peer advisory board with Ranching for Profit School, where we're on it with a group of 6 peers that we look at what we're doing on our ranches and we help each other work through our challenges. We meet out in Billings. Out of that group, the first thing that I was told to do is I needed to go to counseling. I needed to figure out how to live within what we created, figure out how to get rid of my drive or my fear of failure, figure out how to be mindful and really help myself just shut down and be present. So I'm actually got my first meeting next week, so that's kind of something I never thought I'd stand in front of people and say I was going to counseling. I was pretty excited for it. It's a huge change for me. And the rest and recovery, the other thing that came out of that last peer advisory board was to rest this year, both myself and our land. We started implementing our drought plan way back in November for 2022, and out of that board they told me to expedite it, sell all my cattle that we were planning to sell in the worst case scenario, do it all now, let my grass recover. This is being the 3rd year of a pretty severe drought in our area, and let myself recover. I still push way too hard, even though I've quit doing all this stuff. I still have a drive and really push for it. So I do consider myself a recovering workaholic. I still have I'm still willing to work way too many hours and push harder than I should. I still have anxiety, but I haven't had panic attacks for a long time. I'm better able to recognize my triggers and more self-aware, and knowing my strengths and weaknesses and really focusing on my strengths. And getting better for asking for help and recognizing the importance of self-care. I'm better able to be a good neighbor and actually seeking out some friendships I never took time to do before. And having a shared purpose that allows Barb and I to work together and not feel alone is probably the best thing that's come out of this. We're such a good team. She She loves education and research, and that's her gift. And she spends a ridiculous amount of time listening to podcasts and learning and reading. And my gift is implementing and executing and making things happen. And she can tell me the cliff notes of a 4-hour deal she listened to, and I can go apply it that day. And it's really a pretty effective thing that we have running. And we're excited about the future. We're not dreaming of retirement anymore. It was always a plan of ours to retire maybe at 50, 55, go do something different. I'm pretty sure we'll be doing this till I'm 80 years old. I have no plans to retire. We will be very open to the next generation coming in, and we don't know where our future is going to take us, but we'll always be in the regenerative ag world of some kind. It's just such an exciting place to be right now. There's so much going on, and it's going to be so prevalent in all of North Dakota and is really the future of agriculture. And I think just in the last 2 years, since we've been involved in it, just the interest has grown so much in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I'm down to 244 tires right now. So I think we do have a plan in place. I think a year from now, that's going to be down around 150 once we get done feeding up some silage and make a few more changes. And I'm hopeful that we'll be down under 100 and not too terribly long. So with that, I guess that kind of is wrapping it up. I guess I do want to touch on just in thanking you guys as soil conservation people. Pam and Kelly, and your resources to me over the years have been wonderful. You have a lot of influence in the producers in your area, and the ability to learn and educate yourself on some of these things that aren't going on in your area will have a lasting effect and really trickles down. And it's really fun, actually, too. I mean, there's so much interesting information out there. There's so many interesting things people are doing. I told Barb the other day, there's really nothing new that Barb and I are doing in everything we've done. Everything that we were doing has been done before. It's just a matter of finding the people that are doing it and adapting it to your situation and understanding the principles of how to tie it all together. So with that, this is a list of resources. We were going to print it off last night, but we couldn't get it. So anybody that wants to take a picture of that or email us or whatever too, we can get a hold of, or we can send that to you. But that's everything from books to podcasts to networks to different things that we use. So with that, I guess that's pretty much what we have. I'm open to questions or whatever throughout the day. We'll be around till noon or so if anybody wants to visit about anything. But with that, that's all we got. So thank you. What's that?